Did ancient architects know the dimensions of the Earth, Moon, and Sun? Were they capable of surveying vast distances with pinpoint precision? Did they encode their advanced understanding in monuments and units of measure? Why do many of the world's religions encode the same geometry in their most sacred symbols and temples? Why do measurements of many disparate phenomena converge on a few specific numbers and ratios? What is the role of synchronicity in revealing meaningful patterns? What does all of this say about the world we live in? Before we look at patterns at all scales, we need to look at the foundations of measurement. There are primarily two measurement systems used in the world today. The United States uses the British imperial system of inches, feet, and miles, while the rest of the world, including Britain, has converted to the metric system, which was initially introduced in revolutionary France. Both systems were originally based on the dimensions of the Earth and on cycles of time. In The Lost Science of Measuring the Earth, Robin Heath and John Michell show that the English foot must have been defined by measuring the Earth's equatorial circumference. The number of English feet around the equator is 1,000 times the number of degrees in a circle times the number of days in a year. This beautiful relationship of a circle to time is 99.994% accurate according to the modern geodetic standard. 528 is a key which harmonizes the measurements of the Earth, Moon, and Sun with time. The numbers 528 form a trinity within the Ennead, of which I'll say more about later. First, let us consider the Earth. Its dimensions can be expressed with great elegance due to the fact that there are 5,280 feet in a mile. In Before the Pyramids, Christopher Knight and Alan Butler show that the unit we now call the meter was used 1,000 years before the three pyramids of Giza at Thornborough in England. Three henges having the same relative positions on the ground as the belt stars of Orion in the sky are at a site that is 1/10 of the Earth's polar circumference from the North Pole. The distance between the outer henges is exactly 1,500 meters on center. Knight and Butler show that the meter is not an arbitrary measure, but rather is fundamentally connected to time. The seconds pendulum has a period of 2 seconds, 1 second for a swing in one direction, and 1 second for a swing in the opposite direction. The length of the seconds pendulum is 1 meter. In 1675, Tito Burattini proposed the length of the seconds pendulum be called the meter, more than 100 years before the meter was officially defined as the distance of 10 million units from the equator to the North Pole, running through Paris as the prime meridian. Today the meter is circularly defined in terms of the speed of light, which is itself measured in meters per second. The nautical mile, which is still used by mariners and pilots, was originally defined as 1 minute of arc along any meridian. There are therefore 21,600 nautical miles in the polar circumference of the Earth. The Moon harmonizes with this number, as there are 2,160 miles in the lunar diameter. If units of distance are based on time, then the way that time is divided must also be part of the system. The Earth's rotation is divided into 24 hours, and as it turns out, 24 is a fundamental number. The Fibonacci sequence is one of the most important and beautiful concepts in mathematics. Start with nothing, then create a sequence with something, namely 1. Add the current number to the previous number to get the next term in the sequence. So 0 plus 1 is 1, then 1 plus 1 is 2. The subsequent terms are 3, 5, 8, and so on. Continuing in this way, you get a sequence that spirals out of the void into infinity. Every ratio of successive terms in the Fibonacci sequence approximates the golden ratio phi. The higher in the Fibonacci sequence you go, the closer the ratios get to phi. The ratios oscillate above and below phi, getting ever closer as the sequence progresses. The bodies of innumerable living things are built using the Fibonacci sequence, and thus manifest their forms from the template of phi in their morphic fields. Every number can be reduced to a single digit by adding its places horizontally. For example, the number 13 can be reduced to 4 because 1 plus 3 is 4. Larger numbers such as 55 require multiple reductions, such as 5 plus 5 equals 10, and then 1 plus 0 equals 1. In the end, all numbers can be reduced to single digits called digital roots. The Fibonacci sequence's digital roots repeat with a period of 24. When the digital roots of the Fibonacci sequence are placed around a circle, you can see that all opposite number pairs add to 9. Most people aren't aware that, in addition to hieroglyphics, the ancient Egyptians used an alphabet called uniliterals, which had 24 letters. I see this as another clue to the importance of 24. Prime numbers are numbers divisible only by themselves in 1. Prime numbers are the basis of banking security, as it is computationally prohibitive to decompose large numbers into their prime divisors. In the book God's Secret Formula, Peter Plichta noticed that if you arrange all numbers in concentric rings around a circle with a period of 24, then prime numbers exist only on 8 of the rays. This is true for all prime numbers except for the numbers 2 and 3 that are part of the initial trinity of numbers. It's a fascinating coincidence that the Maltese or Templar cross is depicted in the primes, which are so important to banking, since the Templars literally invented multinational banking. Jeremy Stride at Code144.com discovered a prime number code at Coral Castle. The complex of megalithic blocks was constructed single-handedly and without heavy machinery by the secretive Ed Leedskalnin in 1920. Many believe Leedskalnin understood the connection between magnetism and gravity, because it appears that he was able to levitate massive stone blocks and float them into position. Leedskalnin said he, quote, discovered the secrets of the pyramids, end quote. His rotor artifact consists of 24 magnets arranged in a ring. In the book The Holy Science, Sri Yukteswar, guru of Yogananda, claimed that the Earth's precessional cycle is exactly 24,000 years, even though traditionally this has been calculated as 25,920 years. Both are correct in a manner of speaking. Although it is now recognized that the rate of precession changes over time, what causes the precessional cycle isn't well understood by mainstream scientists. Walter Cruttenden of BinaryResearchInstitute.org presents a credible model that explains the precession phenomenon. He says the solar system moves, and this in turn changes the Earth's orientation to the distant stars. Our solar system and the Sirius system, which we perceive as the brightest star in the sky, appear to rotate around a common center of mass. In the 17th century, Johannes Kepler discovered the 3 laws of planetary motion, which show that the orbit of every planet is an ellipse, and that orbital speed varies according to where each body is in its orbital path. With this new understanding, it makes sense that the rate of precession would vary as our systems slowly transit an elliptical orbit. So to astronomers in earlier times, it appeared that the precessional cycle was 25,920 years, but now that the yearly rate is speeding up, it's looking more like the cycle could be 24,000 years. In this binary solar system model, the rate of precession per degree varies from 60 to 72 years, with 66.6 years as the average rate. If our solar system truly dances in a 24,000-year cycle with the Sirius system, then 24 resonates with the music of our spheres. Consider the fact that there are 12 notes in the chromatic musical scale. One octave up and down correspond beautifully to a day and night of 24 hours. A mean solar day is defined as exactly 24 hours. Of course, each hour is divided into 60 minutes, and each minute is divided into 60 seconds. So there are 86,400 seconds in a day and night on Earth. The Sun's diameter is 864,000 miles. We find 864 also expressed in alignments, technology, architecture, and urban design. In The Lost Science of Measuring the Earth, Heath and Michelle reveal that not only is the distance from Stonehenge to Silbury Hill 86,400 feet, but Silbury Hill itself is dimensioned in units of 8.64 feet. The 35mm film format used for over 100 years, which continues today with full-frame digital SLR cameras, has an area of 864 square millimeters. This is a most appropriate size to capture the light of the sun. The area of the largest square in Paris, La Place de la Concorde, is 86,400 square meters. The height of the Transamerica Pyramid in San Francisco is 864 feet, if you include its glass pyramidion. The quoted height is some 11 feet less, but I think this was done to tie it in more closely with its namesake, the Great Pyramid of Egypt. The Great Pyramid is the sole surviving wonder of the ancient world. It remains the oldest, largest, and most accurate building ever built. It was the tallest structure in the world for 4 millennia. It is aligned within 0.1% of true north, and its 13-acre base is horizontal and flat to within 15 millimeters. The scale and accuracy are astounding. In the book Sacred Number and the Origins of Civilization, Richard Heath's metrology shows that the Great Pyramid is 480 feet in height, which is exactly 1/11th of a mile. Its missing pyramidion would measure 1 1/11th feet in height if it were to cap off the geometric mountain of 2.3 million blocks of stone. In terms of the pyramid and its pyramidion, the metrology is clearly a play of ones. In the book Fingerprints of the Gods, Graham Hancock pointed out that the height of the Great Pyramid times 43,200 is equal to the Earth's polar radius in feet, and that its base perimeter times 43,200 is equal to the Earth's equatorial circumference in feet. Aside from being twice 216 and half 864, the number 432 encodes yet another layer of the genius which is encoded in the Great Pyramid. 432 times 432 equals the speed of light in miles per second. The latitude of the Great Pyramid encodes the speed of light in meters per second. It therefore seems appropriate that the word pyramid is composed of two Greek words, Pyra meaning light or fire, and Meidos meaning measures, because the Great Pyramid truly encodes the measures of light. The Grecian mystical Pythagorean brotherhood considered the knowledge of 432 and similar relationships essential in order to gain mastery of oneself. There is a movement to return to the Verdi tuning of 432 Hz, which many opera singers believe is more natural for the human voice compared to the standard concert tuning. In addition to its dimensions, the proportions of the Great Pyramid encode great wisdom. Consider that the height to base proportion is 7:11. The Statue of Liberty in New York, which truly embodies the Egyptian goddess Isis, has a 7-pointed crown and stands on an 11-pointed base star. The height of the statue from heel to top of head is 111 feet 1 inch, recalling the play of ones in the Great Pyramid's metrology. The pyramid's height to half-base proportion is 4 to pi, while its face to half-base proportion is phi to 1. Based on the remaining casing stones, the slope of the Great Pyramid was originally between 51 and 52 degrees. This angle is very important in sacred geometry. The Vesica Pisces is the geometric womb from which all of creation emerges. It is simply the relationship between two equal circles. If you center the circles on each other's circumferences and then nest the form inside itself, it becomes pregnant with a pyramid whose slope measures 51.61 degrees. If instead you place two equal circles together above and below and circumscribe them, you have the basis of the yin and yang diagram of Taoism. In his book Sacred Geometry, Robert Lawlor showed an encompassing square that reveals phi relationships in a diagram that he called the Mouth of Ra, named after the Egyptian sun god. If you then draw larger circles with phi as the radius, they are tangent to the inner circles and beautifully form more phi relationships. Joining the centers of the larger circles with the top point of intersection forms a pyramid with a slope of 51.83 degrees. The circle is traditionally a symbol of heaven, and the square a symbol of earth. The reconciliation of opposites, such as heaven and earth, or the limitless with the limited, is the challenge of squaring the circle. The Freemasonic emblem of compasses and square obviously suggests drawing a circle in a square. The first method of reconciling a square with a circle is by comparing lengths. Using a computer, I can draw a circle with a diameter equal to the square root of phi around a square with an edge length of 1. The lengths of square and circle are 99.9% equal. All circle and square constructions are approximations because of what mathematicians describe as the transcendental nature of pi. Another method of squaring the circle is by comparing areas. Draw a circle with a diameter of 9, about a square with an edge length of 8, and their areas will be equal to the tune of 99.4%. The ratio 9 to 8 is known as the whole tone in music. Heaven is a whole tone away from earth, if you will. Squaring a circle is also at the heart of the Great Pyramid. I'll square a circle so that its circumference equals the square's perimeter as closely as computer-aided design software can approximate. Then I will draw lines from the center out to two of the points where the circle and square intersect. If you superimpose the diagram on an analog clock, the green lines point to the time 10:08. A large number of watch advertisements show the time 10:08. Remember to take a look yourself. I discovered that by drawing red lines perpendicular to the green lines, with all three tangent to the circle, one can construct a pyramid which surprisingly has a 51.76 degree slope. Thus, the pyramid slope follows from squaring the circle. Maybe it's no surprise, but the slope of I.M. Pei's Louvre Pyramid in Paris closely matches the slope of the Great Pyramid in Egypt. I discovered that the azimuth of summer solstice sunrise on the Louvre Pyramid is exactly 51.76 degrees from true north. In the books Talisman and more recently in The Master Game, Graham Hancock and Robert Bivol present compelling historical and etymological evidence that Paris was originally founded as a temple dedicated to the Egyptian goddess Isis. What better place to found Paris than at the exact latitude encoded by squaring the circle? Izapa, in Mexico, is where the Mayan 260-day Xolcan calendar originated. Being in the tropics, the sun passes directly overhead at Izapa on exactly 2 days of the year, August 12th and May 1st. There are 260 days between August 12th and May 1st. This seems to explain why the 260-day cycle was introduced at Izapa. Bert Janssen discovered that if you map the year to a circle, 260 days subtends the major arc indicated by the green lines in the squaring the circle diagram, with an accuracy of 99.96%. Therefore, the design of the Mayan calendar also resonates with squaring the circle. Janssen also discovered that the azimuths of the solstice sunrises and sunsets at Silbury Hill trace the same lines as above, so below on the squaring the circle diagram. In City of Revelation, John Michel showed in a simple diagram how the Great Pyramid encodes not only the proportions, but the dimensions of the Earth and Moon and the distance between them. Start with a 3-4-5 Pythagorean triangle. Draw a square of edge length 3 on the side, and inscribe a circle in it to represent the moon. Then draw a mirror 3-4-5 triangle opposite. Draw a larger square below with an edge length of 11. Inscribe a circle in the large square to represent the Earth. Next, draw a circle with its radius extending from the center of the Earth through to the center of the moon. This circle matches the large square in terms of length with an accuracy of 99.96%, so you have just squared the circle. Amazingly, this diagram actually encodes the Earth and Moon's true proportions of 3:11. Connecting these 3 points makes a pyramid with a 51.85-degree slope. Scaling this diagram up by a factor of 720 gives you the actual dimensions of the Earth and Moon in miles. Inscribe a hexagon within the Earth circle and measure its perimeter. It is 1/10 the average distance from the Earth to the Moon, with an accuracy of 99.6%. John Michel also realized that the same Earth-Moon diagram not only fits perfectly over Stonehenge, but it also encodes its dimensions in feet rather than miles. This reveals a design connection between ancient Egypt and the Neolithic United Kingdom. It is worth recognizing that the ancient Egyptian civilization shared a similar timeline with Stonehenge. We've already seen how the meter was encoded at Thornborough, where the 3 henges were laid out to mirror the belt of Orion. In the Orion Mystery, Robert Bauval and Adrian Gilbert showed that the 3 pyramids of Giza mirror the same 3 stars. Archaeological evidence of crude bone and antler tools proves that the builders of henges were indeed our ancestors. However, the architects of these monuments encoded advanced knowledge of Earth, Sun, Moon, and the speed of light. In Before the Pyramids, Knight and Butler explain what they call the megalithic or large stone system of measurement. As you'll see later, this system was used not only in Neolithic times, but is still secretly being used in modern cities. The Earth rotates 366 times a year relative to the stars. A sidereal day is 236 seconds less than a mean solar day. Over the year, that amounts to the Earth rotating 1 extra day relative to the stars. In recognition of this fact, the megalithic system is based on a circle divided into 366 degrees, rather than the 360 degrees we are used to. Consider also that the Earth is 366% the size of the Moon. Each of these 366 degrees is then divided into 60 minutes, and each minute is further divided into just 6 seconds. Each second of arc is finally divided into 366 megalithic yards on the Earth. Only in the megalithic system is 1 second of arc equal to 1 second of time of the Earth turning on its axis, so 366 megalithic yards is equally 1 second of arc and 1 second of time. This system also creates a beautiful cosmic harmony because 1 second of arc on the Moon measures exactly 100 megalithic yards, and 1 second of arc on the Sun measures exactly 40,000 megalithic yards. Knight and Butler say that, quote, "the whole system is virtually miraculous, making our modern approach to measurement systems look primitive," end quote. By unifying time and arc measurement on Earth, Moon, and Sun, the ancients created an elegant and practical system. Stonehenge's actual henge is 366 megalithic yards in circumference. The second largest pyramid at Giza fits within a circle having a diameter of 366 megalithic yards. Knight and Butler additionally show that weights and measures such as the pound and the pint appear to be derived from the megalithic system. Absolute zero is the theoretical coldest possible temperature where all molecular motion ceases. If temperature were measured from 0 for freezing ice to 366 degrees for boiling water, absolute zero would be exactly 1,000 degrees below zero. Alexander Thom reverse-engineered the megalithic yard after surveying thousands of sites in the United Kingdom. He defined the megalithic yard as 2.722 feet, plus or minus 2 1,000ths of a foot. Robin Heath and John Michell had reason to believe this value was ever so slightly off by 0.2%. They defined what they call an astronomical megalithic yard in the lost science of measuring the Earth. The metrology of the astronomical megalithic yard reminds me of the latitude of Avebury and the fact that there are 5,280 feet in a mile. I see that both the megalithic yard and the astronomical megalithic yard are suspiciously close to the mathematical constant E. Euler's identity, which has been called the most beautiful theorem in mathematics, relates E to pi, imaginary numbers, unity, and the void. Like pi, E is a transcendental number. E is fundamental in science as the base of the natural logarithm, which, among many other things, is used to calculate the distribution of prime numbers. E is also fundamental in business. To understand this, imagine that you have an account with $100 that pays 100% interest per year. Fantastic. If the interest is credited once at the end of the year, you will have $200. If the same interest is compounded every 6 months, you will have $225. Compounding quarterly yields $244, and compounding monthly yields $261. With continuous compounding, the account yields $271.82, which is E times 100. When Google filed their initial public offering in 2004, the company announced its intention to raise exactly $E billion. In my opinion, E's importance is right up there with pi, phi, and 528. I discovered the following rationale for these constants, which is 99.9% accurate. Hugh Harleston had this to say about the pyramid complex in Teotihuacan, Mexico. Here was a design whose dimensional configurations provided accurate universal mathematical and other constants with a minimum of shared points, laid out to incorporate the values of pi, phi, and E. Perhaps the pyramid complex was an intended hint to latecomers to expand their consciousness for a clearer view of the cosmos and of man's relation to the whole. Baalbek in Lebanon is another ancient complex that will help us to expand our consciousness. The distance from Stonehenge to Baalbek is exactly 3,600 kilometers. This is interesting because the inner and outer points of a pentagram are arrayed every 36 degrees around a full circle of 360 degrees. As you keep spinning around the circle, the tips of the pentagram hit many significant degrees related to Earth, Moon, Sun, and the precessional cycle. All the degrees revolving around the pentagram have 9 as their digital roots. It seems appropriate that gamblers sometimes thank their lucky stars on their roulette wheel, which has 36 as its highest number. The sum of the numbers 1 through 36 is 666. Baalbek is named after the god Baal, which means Lord. The priests of Baal are mentioned in the Hebrew Bible numerous times. Jeroboam and Aaron both made golden calves to Baal. Baal worshipper, or Baal-zebub, anglicized Beelzebub, came to be identified in Christianity as a demon or devil. Baalbek has been continuously settled for over 9,000 years, making its massive platform one of the oldest structures on Earth. 3 stones in its foundation present one of the world's greatest mysteries. Each of these stones weighs approximately 800 tons based on its volume and density. A megalith still in the quarry less than a mile away weighs in excess of 2.4 million pounds. With more pounds than there are blocks in the Great Pyramid, it is hard to imagine that the ancient engineers didn't understand the connection between magnetism and gravity. Baalbek was known as Heliopolis in the time of Alexander the Great. Alexander stopped at Baalbek in 333 BC on his march to Memphis, the ancient Egyptian capital. The Roman Macrobius later wrote that Baalbek as Heliopolis was a priest colony from its namesake Egyptian city of the sun. In Geomantic Information Systems Volume 1, researcher Kurt Lindahl has identified the significance of the hexagonal temple on top of the Baalbek platform and its location on the Earth. He drew a line connecting the hexagon of Baalbek with the Great Pyramid. Amazingly, the line goes through 2 corners of the hexagon and 2 of the corners of the Great Pyramid. Lindahl drew another line through the opposite corners of the Great Pyramid and extended it to the northwest. He found that it goes directly to the apex of the 32-story Pyramid Arena of Memphis, Tennessee. Memphis, Tennessee was of course named after its Egyptian namesake. Incidentally, there is one larger pyramid in the United States in the form of the Luxor, Las Vegas. The Pyramidal Casino is a solar 365 feet high, which also happens to be equal to 111 meters. The Pyramidion contains a spotlight which is claimed to be the brightest beam of light in the world. There is an interesting play of ones in the Luxor Casino's 11,000 square meter area, its 11 acres of glass, and the 110-foot Sphinx sitting out front that echoes the Great Pyramid's metrology. Back at the Great Pyramid, Lindahl extended the northwest line to the southeast and discovered that it goes directly to the Kaaba in Mecca. A line starting at the Kaaba goes through 2 more corners of the hexagon at Baalbek. The hexagonal temple of Baalbek echoes the Kaaba's shape as a hexahedron or cube. When the dots are connected, I see a geomantic triangle from space. Furthermore, this triangle has the proportions of a 1:2 right triangle. In other words, the distance from the Great Pyramid to Mecca is twice as far as it is from the Great Pyramid to Baalbek. The hypotenuse of this Pythagorean triangle, the distance from Baalbek to Mecca that is, measures 777 nautical miles. Pythagoras the Greek was educated in Heliopolis, and it is to him that we attribute what was actually ancient Egyptian knowledge of triangles. The heart of the Great Pyramid is called the King's Chamber. Its floor plan is composed of 2 1:2 triangles. The King's Chamber is therefore a microcosm of the geomantic triangle, as above, so below. The incredible thing about the 1 to 2 triangle is that it encodes both phi and pi. Instead of measuring 1 to 2, it is fair to scale the triangle down by half so it measures 1/2 to 1. The triangle has the same proportions. Swing 2 arcs with compasses, and the place where the second arc touches the 1 edge measures 1 over phi. To find pi, we will scale the triangle up by a factor of 6 over 5. The perimeter of this triangle yields pi with astonishingly high precision. The Great Pyramid's faces are subtly divided in the middle, which you can see under certain lighting conditions. This is a clue. Take a square and draw 3 lines dividing edges at their midpoints. What you are left with is a series of 1 to 2 triangles surrounding a 3, 4, 5 triangle. This is interesting because the king's chamber itself was designed using both of these triangles. The king's chamber encodes not only 2 1 to 2 triangles, or 2 squares on the floor, but a 3, 4, 5 triangle in 3 dimensions. As it turns out, Mecca is very close to the golden latitude. If you divide the full meridian by phi, you get 111 degrees and change. If measured from the South Pole, the precise phi latitude is only 12.13 miles south of Mecca. The most sacred object in Islam is the Kaaba, which Muslims circumambulate 7 times during the Hajj. These numbers remind me of John Michel's New Jerusalem diagram, which is an elaboration of the Earth-Moon diagram. In Volume 1 I discussed how its 7 points encode the musical scale, while the Earth's circumambulation of the Sun encodes the 12 months of the year. In ancient Egypt, the word Ka meant divine spark, and Ba meant soul. The word Kaaba means cube. Perhaps the cube represents the divine spark animating the individual soul. An interesting fact about cubes is that the diagonal connecting opposite corners in 3 dimensions is the square root of 3, the same dimension that measures the Vesica Pisces. The sum of all the angles in a cube is 2,160 degrees, which happens to also be the moon's diameter in miles. A cube has 6 sides. If each side has an edge length of 6, then the cube's volume and surface area would be 6 times 6 times 6, or 216. 6 is the only dimension for a cube which gives the same number for its volume and surface areas. It just so happens that 6 times 6 times 6 equals 3 cubed plus 4 cubed plus 5 cubed, symbolically connecting the Kaaba with the hyperdimensional 3-4-5 triangle. Astonishingly, the Kaaba is 666 nautical miles from the Dome of the Rock in Jerusalem. The Dome of the Rock on the Temple Mount in Jerusalem is the oldest Islamic monument still in existence. Its 24 outer piers echo the 24 prophets that came before Muhammad and the 24 hours of a day. The foundation stone at the center of what author David Flynn called the Temple at the Center of Time is sacred also to Christians and Jews. The foundation stone is thought to have been where Abraham nearly sacrificed Isaac. Many Jews believe that the foundation stone was the location of Solomon's temple, which was destroyed by the Babylonians. It is interesting that the dimensions of the Holy of Holies within Solomon's temple, described in the Bible, show that it too was a cube containing the Ark of the Covenant. The dimensions of Solomon's temple reveal a cube and a 3-4-5 triangle. The Seal of Solomon is also connected with the hexahedron, or cube. The heavenly Jerusalem described in the book of Revelation has the dimensions of a cube. Solomon's wisdom was as legendary as his wealth. Now the weight of gold that came to Solomon in 1 year was 666 talents of gold. In today's gold prices, 666 talents is equal to approximately $1.11 billion. The Seal of Solomon encodes 666 with 6 inner and outer points plus 6 smaller equilateral triangles. Solomon's name echoes Sol-Amon, the Egyptian sun god. All the rows and columns in the magic square of the sun add up to 111. The sum of the rows or columns is, of course, 666. The floor plan of the Dome of the Rock is an octagon, which is a symbol of the sun used in cultures around the world. The Knights Templar took their name from the Temple Mount and their emblem from the Dome of the Rock. The Freemasons see themselves as heirs to the Knights Templar. One of their goals appears to be to rebuild Solomon's Temple wherever they are able. Frank Albo's research on the Manitoba Legislative Building at the Geographic Center of North America reveals it to be a replica of Solomon's Temple, complete with a central cubic space measuring 66.6 feet on edge, the octagonal pool of the Black Star, and much more. Freemasons claim that the outer pillars in Solomon's Temple represent the pillars of Enoch, called Boaz and Jachin, and these are built into every Masonic lodge. As the story goes, Enoch recorded the sum total of knowledge on 2 pillars and buried them 9 levels deep in the Temple Mount before the Great Flood. This unearthed information is likely to be the source of Solomon's wisdom and the Templar's secrets. Enoch didn't die, but was instead transfigured into the archangel Metatron when he was a solar 365 years of age. Metatron's hypercube is a sacred geometry encoding much wisdom that I discussed in Volume 1. There are 22 paths in the Tree of Life, plus 10 visible Sephiro yielding 32 elements. There is one hidden Sephiro called Doth, bringing the secret total up to 33. Both 32 and 33 are highly charged numbers with wide-ranging resonances. Scottish Rite Freemasons have 32 degrees which members can earn, plus the final 33rd degree, which is conferred only on those selected by the 33 members of a Supreme Council. The mother of all Supreme Councils is itself in the position of the Eye of God within the pyramid diagram encoded into Washington, D.C., shown in Volume 1. The eagle on the Great Seal of the United States has 33 feathers on one wing and 32 on the other. Jesus, the Son of God, was said to have performed 33 miracles and was crucified at age 33. In 2010, scientists at Stanford University discovered that the Sun's core rotates once every 33 days. The Sun is 333,000 times more massive than the Earth. It takes 33.3 times 10 to the negative 10th seconds for light to travel 1 meter. The Sun is truly the all-seeing eye par excellence. The Sun has a volume 33 orders of magnitude larger than a pair of dice. The scale at which the structure of space-time becomes dominated by quantum effects, known as the Planck length, is 33 orders of magnitude smaller than that pair of dice. Was Einstein right in saying God does not play dice with the universe? The Federal Reserve Bank of New York, which is the largest gold repository in the world, is located at 33 Liberty Street. NASA is rife with 33 symbolism with its Runway 33 in Florida, and the historical Launch Complex 33, all by itself in the middle of nowhere in the New Mexico desert. Not far away is the brand new Spaceport America, built precisely on the 33rd parallel. Perhaps NASA's 33s come from the fact that the highest speed a spacecraft can orbit is Mach 33, or 11.1 kilometers per second. If Mach 33 is exceeded, the spacecraft escapes from the gravity well of Earth. On the other hand, if you dive into our watery planet, Every 33 feet you descend below sea level, the pressure increases by 1 atmosphere. At the human scale, there are 33 bones in our spinal columns. In terms of places, 33 is encoded in Mount Zion at the northernmost tip of Israel. The late David Flynn noted that not only is Mount Zion located 33 degrees north of the equator, but it is 33 degrees east of the Paris prime meridian. It should therefore be no surprise that King David, father of Solomon, reigned for 33 years in Jerusalem. The summit of Mount Zion features the highest permanently manned United Nations position in the world. The UN emblem divides the world into 33 sectors, just as Greater London is divided into 32 boroughs surrounding the City of London Corporation's square mile. I was amazed when I verified David Flynn's discovery that the Dome of the Rock is exactly 33 miles from the sea. Before I upgraded to the latest version of Google Earth on October 17, 2011, I measured the distance from Glastonbury Tor to the Dome of the Rock, and it was 33.3 degrees. After the upgrade, this distance now measures 33.8 degrees. So Google must have updated the geoid, or exact shape of the Earth, in the new version. After upgrading Google Earth, I measured the distance from Stonehenge to the Dome of the Rock and was again astounded. The Dome of the Rock is exactly 33.33 degrees away from Stonehenge, at a bearing of 111 degrees from true north. We don't normally measure distances in degrees, but this is possible in Google Earth, which compensates for the variable length of degrees which change with latitude and longitude according to the geoid. In Temple at the Center of Time, David Flynn made the incredible correlation between the fact that the distance from the Dome of the Rock to Babylon is 539 miles, and the Jews were released from their Babylonian captivity in 539 BC. The latitude of the center of ancient Babylon is 32 degrees, 32 minutes, and 32 seconds north. Saddam Hussein's reconstruction of Babylon includes many bricks having the inscription, "This was built by Saddam Hussein, son of Nebuchadnezzar, to glorify Iraq." Nebuchadnezzar conquered Jerusalem, destroyed Solomon's temple, and took the Jews into captivity. Nebuchadnezzar's actual son was Belshazzar, the king who saw a disembodied hand writing on the wall, foretelling his fate. He was killed in 539 BC when the Persians invaded. Saddam Hussein didn't survive the invasion either. The first Gulf War began with a UN-authorized coalition led by George H.W. Bush in what was called Operation Desert Storm. His son George W. Bush continued the second Gulf War, which was called Operation Iraqi Freedom. Blogger Cal Danny noticed that there are 4,444 days between the start dates of Desert Storm and Iraqi Freedom. Coincidentally, Iraqi freedom began 555 days after 9/11. Saddam Hussein's palace, adjacent to ancient Babylon, is atop a spiral mound that recalls both the Tower of Babel and Silbury Hill. However, the original man-made mountain in Babylon was the god Marduk's ziggurat, called Etemenanki. Two buildings inspired by Etemenanki are Babylon on the Thames, as the British Secret Intelligence Service building is known, and the Chet Holyfield Federal Building in Southern California. William Pereira, the architect who designed the Transamerica Pyramid, also designed the ziggurat, as it is known in Southern California. The building is located at 33 degrees, 33 minutes, and 33 seconds north. It houses branches of Homeland Security and the IRS. In the chaos of the Gulf Wars, it is estimated that 500,000 ancient Sumerian, Akkadian, Babylonian, Assyrian, and Chaldean artifacts were plundered. During Iraqi freedom, the U.S. soldiers set up a military base they called Camp Alpha, within the walls of ancient Babylon. The soldiers unfortunately caused substantial damage to the Ishtar Gate by trying to remove 9 molded brick figures of dragons from the walls. The Ishtar Gate was the gateway to ancient Babylon, along the processional way that parallels Saddam Hussein's reconstructed eastern wall of Babylon. I wondered if this angle was important, so I traced a line at this bearing and extended it halfway around the world. The line leaving through the Ishtar Gate on the road out of Babylon leads directly to an imitation Babylonian gate in Hollywood, California. The distance between Babylon and Hollywood is 111 degrees. This is approximately the same distance Mecca is from the South Pole, a distance which divides the meridian by phi. The imitation Babylonian Gate is at Hollywood and Highland along the Hollywood Walk of Fame. It is among the most visited tourist destinations in Los Angeles. The gate frames a view of the Hollywood Hills that contains both the iconic Hollywood sign and the Hollywood Cross. The 33-foot-high Hollywood Cross was an obsession of astrologer Linda Goodman, who many consider to be the mother of the New Age, for writing star signs, which sold over 60 million copies. Goodman spent some of her personal fortune on commissioning scientific surveys which revealed a structure underneath Hollywood Hill that appears to be a pyramid. As far out as this sounds, Goodman believed the chamber within actually contains the phallus of Osiris. A Hopi elder confirms that the ancient Egyptians came to what is now California after the Great Flood. Add to this the fact that author J.K. Rowling gave Harry Potter a wand made of Hollywood, and you might also wonder if there is something deeper and far older to the magic of Hollywood. The anchor tenant of Hollywood and Highland is the official permanent home of the Academy Awards. This is where the Hollywood stars parade down the red carpet on their way to receiving their Oscars. Oscars are in fact the most recognized trophies in the world. The Oscar statuette officially depicts, quote, a knight rendered in Art Deco style holding a crusader's sword standing on a reel of film with 5 spokes, end quote. Might that be a magical pentagram Oscar the Templar is standing on? As the unlikely story goes, an Academy executive secretary remarked that it resembled her uncle Oscar, and the name stuck. Oscars is an anagram for a cross, recalling the Templar cross that goes with the Crusader's sword, and the cross on Hollywood Hill. Hollywood and Highland's unusual decor is based on the 1916 film Intolerance by D.W. Griffith. The theatrical poster reveals the film's subtitle, A Sun Play of the Ages. Hollywood and Highland is a 36,000 square meter complex, a number that ties right in with the sun, as the sum of the numbers 1 through 36 is 666. 36 ties in also with the moon, as 360 or a full circle symbolizes the feminine. Directly across the street from what was formerly known as the Kodak Theater is the Hollywood Masonic Temple. Disney purchased and renovated this historic temple and made it the home of a well-known late-night talk show. Disneyland's exclusive Club 33 makes one ponder the extent of Disney's connections to Freemasonry. I looked into Disneyland Paris and discovered that it is inscribed in a circle with a diameter of 3,141 meters, recalling pi. The distance from the center of the circle to the tip of the Louvre Pyramid is 33,033 meters. In 1989, President Ronald and Nancy Reagan retired to 668 St. Cloud Road in the Eastgate Bel Air district of the Hollywood Hills. It has been said Nancy had the street number changed from 666, but this sounds like an urban legend. However, Ronald Wilson Reagan does have 6 letters in each name. The word Bel in Bel Air means Lord, and therefore Bel is a cognate of Baal. I discovered that the tip of the Santa Monica Pier has precisely the same latitude as the hexagonal temple of Baalbek. On a personal visit, I found that the end of the pier also happens to be the literal end of Route 66. There are a few other 66s worth mentioning. There are 66 books in the Holy Bible written about the God Christians call Lord. Standing Order 66 is precisely what established the Prime Minister as the leader of the British government by becoming First Lord of the Treasury. In Star Wars, the Great Jedi Purge was initiated by the Dark Lord of the Sith by uttering this spell, Execute Order 66. While in LA, I took the short drive back up Route 66 to Hollywood's media and financial capital of Century Plaza, which lies on a beeline between the tip of the Santa Monica Pier and the Babylonian Gate in Hollywood. There appears to be a set of Masonic compasses under an all-seeing eye at the heart of Century City. At the base of the complex are the Century Plaza Towers, which were designed by Minoru Yamasaki, the same architect who designed the original World Trade Center Twin Towers in Manhattan. The Century Plaza Towers are unusual in having triangular footprints, but they appear to symbolize the Masonic Twin Towers of Boaz and Jachin. A single equilateral triangle has long been used to represent the all-seeing eye of the sun. Compasses and interlocking equilateral triangles are echoed in this jewel from the Royal Arch degree of Freemasonry. A pair of equilateral triangles can represent sun and moon, fire and water, man and woman, or any duality. There is alchemy in the tension and reconciliation of opposites. Put the Century Plaza Towers together, and you have a Star of David. The Century Plaza Towers are 44 stories each. Put them together and you have 88. Astronomers recognize exactly 88 constellations in the heavens. Correspondingly, Century Plaza is framed by Constellation Boulevard, an avenue of the stars. In New York City, the Tribute in Light was last illuminated on September 11, 2011, to honor the original Twin Towers designed by Minoru Yamasaki. The most powerful shaft of light ever projected into the night sky consisted of 88 lights, arranged in squares emulating the shape of the Twin Towers. Yamasaki described his World Trade Center Plaza as, quote, a mecca, a great relief from the narrow streets and sidewalks of the surrounding Wall Street area, end quote. Architect Laurie Kerr says, quote, true to his word, Yamasaki replicated the plan of Mecca's courtyard by creating a vast delineated square isolated from the city's bustle by low colonnaded structures and capped by two enormous, perfectly square towers, minarets really, end quote. The bronze sphere at the center of the plaza therefore resonated with the Kaaba. The sphere is made of 52 panels and was motorized to rotate once every 24 hours, representing the number of weeks in a year and the hours in a day on Earth. The sphere was actually named the Great Spherical Caryatid by its sculptor Fritz Koenig. Caryatids are pillars personified as women. The High Priestess Tarot card illustrates what the Twin Towers together with the Great Spherical Caryatid symbolized. The High Priestess sits between the twin pillars of Boaz and Jachin. She holds the Torah, and about her pomegranate seeds are arranged in the Kabbalistic Tree of Life pattern. The bottom sephiro in the Tree of Life is the Earth, represented by the Great Spherical Caryatid. The proportions of the Twin Towers match the proportions given in the Bible, describing the pillars of Solomon's temple. It's interesting that the Twin Towers had 110 floors, or 111 counting the roof. The late Rick Clay pointed out that the Twin Towers stood like an 11 and took 11 years to build. September 11th is 111 days until the end of the year. The first plane to hit a tower was Flight 11, which had 11 crew on board. Strangely enough, another tarot card has a resonance with what happened on 9/11. There is much encoded in a pair of dice. When you roll double sixes, you actually have two cubes with several fundamental symbols intertwined. Aside from the obvious sum of 12, the dice can also be read symbolically as 66, 3333, or 1111. The sum of the numbers 1 through 11 is 66. 33.33 times 33.33 rounds to 1111. Reflecting Absence is the name of the memorial created in the footprints of the Twin Towers. It looks like a pair of cubes within cubes, or a dice roll of double ones. If you put the ones down in the footprints, then what is absent? The new One World Trade Center, formerly known as the Freedom Tower, will be the tallest building in the United States when completed. Its height of 1776 feet echoes the year the Declaration of Independence was signed, and the year the Bavarian Illuminati was formed. 1776 also equals 888 plus 888. The building is like two Transamerica pyramids intersecting as above, so below, if you will, resting on a cubical base. The midpoint of the tower has an octagonal floor plate. This symbolism reminds me of Osiris sitting on a cubical throne in the Egyptian Book of the Dead. The layout of the new One World Trade Center adjacent to the National 9/11 Memorial is correlated with the three pyramids of Giza. You can display latitude and longitude in decimal degrees in Google Earth. Latitudes north of the equator are positive, and longitudes west of the prime meridian are negative. The coordinates of one corner of the core of One World Trade Center are as follows. Adding the coordinates yields the sum of negative 33.3 degrees. The sum of the building heights in the new World Trade Center is 6,660 feet. Directly across West Street from One World Trade Center is the tallest building in the World Financial Center, which is known as the American Express Tower. The building was designed by Cesar Pelli, who also designed a very similar building in London's financial centre called One Canada Square. Both structures are square shafts surmounted by pyramids. One Canada Square was the tallest building in the UK until very recently, when the construction of the Shard at 32 London Bridge made it the tallest building. One Canada Square has a floor area of 111,000 square meters, and the Shard has a floor area of 110,000 square meters. One Canada Square has a tuned mass damping pendulum that can sway up to 33 centimeters to offset movements in the building caused by wind. Pelli originally designed One Canada Square to be 864 feet high, but this had to be reduced to 770 feet due to being in the flight path of the London City Airport. Nearby, the Millennium Dome's 365-meter diameter, 52-meter height, and 12 masts echo the days, weeks, and months of the solar year. Back in Manhattan, Dr. Mark Gray discovered that the distance from the tip of the pyramid on the World Financial Center to Cleopatra's Needle in Central Park is 333,000 inches. Amazingly, the building is also oriented with respect to this alignment with the ancient Egyptian obelisk. In the lobby of American Express's corporate headquarters in this building, there is a monument called 11 Tiers, which honors the 11 employees killed on 9/11. It consists of an 11-sided piece of quartz suspended on 11 cables, hovering over an 11-sided black granite fountain, with 11 sources of water splashing in the pool reflecting the crystal. In Volume 1, I showed an alignment starting underwater in the Jacqueline Kennedy Onassis Reservoir in Central Park, passing through the ancient Egyptian Temple of Dendur in the Met, straight to the United Nations headquarters. The Temple of Dendur was one of several ancient Egyptian temples that were given to other countries when the Aswan High Dam was built in the 60s. The 111-meter-high dam holds back 111 cubic kilometers of water and lets it flow down the Nile at a maximum of 11,000 cubic meters per second. The ancient Egyptian Temple of Dibod was given to Spain and placed in Madrid. I traced the axis of the complex in Madrid straight to the ancient Egyptian obelisk in the Vatican. The alignment of the Temple of Dibod passes through a windrose marker surrounding the obelisk. The ancient Egyptian Temple of Elysia was given to Italy when the Aswan High Dam was built. It is located in Italy's largest Egyptian museum in Turin. This alignment also passes through a windrose marker surrounding the obelisk in the Vatican. Kurt Lindahl discovered several more key pieces of the puzzle. Alignments from Aachen Cathedral in Germany, Schönbrunn Palace in Vienna, the Hagia Sophia in Istanbul, and the Dome of the Rock in Jerusalem all pass over windrose markers in the pavement surrounding the Vatican obelisk. Byzantium was the capital of the Roman Empire in late antiquity. In the Middle Ages, Holy Roman emperors ruled in Aachen and later in Schönbrunn. The double-headed eagle was the emblem of these groups and continues in Freemasonry today. For what it's worth, Lindahl also discovered that a line connecting the Vatican obelisk with Coral Castle in Homestead, Florida, also goes through a windrose marker. I measured the distance, and it's 330,330,000 inches to the marked point. Kurt Lindahl discovered another interesting alignment starting at Cleopatra's Needle in New York City. The Grand Master of Masons in the state of New York presided over the ceremony as the cornerstone for this obelisk was laid in 1880. If you draw a line from Cleopatra's Needle to the center of the Museum of Jewish Heritage at 36 Battery Park, the line passes directly through the Grand Masonic Lodge of New York. Amazingly, the museum is also oriented with respect to this alignment with the obelisk. The core of the museum is housed in a hexagonal building, officially symbolizing the 6 points of the Star of David and the 6 million Jews who perished in the Holocaust. The museum at the tip of Manhattan rises in tiers like a step pyramid or ziggurat. Directly across the harbor from the Museum of Jewish Heritage is the Statue of Liberty. The Grand Master of Masons in the state of New York presided over another ceremony as the cornerstone for the colossal lighthouse was laid in 1884. A line connecting the Statue of Liberty's torch with the Kaaba in Mecca goes right down the pier jutting out of Liberty Island. Islam in the Qibla, or direction of prayer toward the Kaaba, is secretly honored on Liberty Island. On September 11, 2012, a new museum will open at Ground Zero. The National September 11th Museum will showcase a sculpture of 2 tridents in a glass atrium space located between the twin footprints of reflecting absence. Dr. Mark Gray discovered a Christian connection in that the distance from the tridents to the rond point of the Cathedral of St. John the Divine is 11,111 meters. Twin tridents represent the number 33. The weapon of Lord Shiva, the Hindu god of destruction and transformation, is a trident. Shiva has 108 names which devotees chant. That's interesting because Venus is an average of 108 million kilometers from the Sun. The diameter of the Sun is 108 Earth diameters. The Earth is 108 solar diameters from the Sun, The Moon is 108 lunar diameters from the Earth, and the Moon's radius is 1,080 miles. Knight and Butler discovered that the distance from Ground Zero in New York to Ellipse Park in Washington, D.C. measures 1,080 megalithic seconds of arc. The bearing of this line from D.C. is 51 degrees true north, echoing the slope of the Great Pyramid. Ellipse Park is located right in front of the White House. Its major axis measures 366 megalithic yards, which is equal to 1 megalithic second. In Before the Pyramids, Knight and Butler explained that much of D.C. was laid out in megalithic units. There is a huge arrow encoded in public circles and squares pointing to Ellipse Park. Every edge in the arrow is an integer number of megalithic seconds. They believe there is an underground chamber at the center of Ellipse Park containing the Ark of the Covenant. A triangle connecting the centers of Ellipse Park, the Capitol Dome, and the Pentagon measures 33 megalithic seconds. Knight and Butler show that the Pentagon itself was designed with megalithic measure, the corners each being arcs of 1 megalithic second apart. FDR was behind both the design and site selection for the Pentagon. FDR was also a 32nd degree Freemason. The ground for the Pentagon was broken on September 11, 1941, exactly 60 years before 9/11. Knight and Butler recognized Observatory Circle as a henge, but were inconclusive as to whether it was designed with megalithic measure. The United States Naval Observatory is located within the circular henge. Its primary mission is to provide position, navigation, and timing for the Department of Defense. Two master clock facilities located at the observatory synchronize the GPS system and serve time to the Internet. One observatory circle is the residence of the Vice President of the United States. Observatory Circle has a diameter of 666.6 yards. I discovered that the distance from the center of Observatory Circle to the entrance of the Capitol building is 6,666 yards. Was this what Andrew Ellicott was thinking in 1792 when he revised L'Enfant's original plan? The Capitol building is in the position of the pineal gland on the map. The apotheosis of George Washington discussed in Volume 1 is under the dome, depicting the Founding Fathers' transformation into a solar deity. The Washington Monument has a height of 555 feet, 5.125 inches, and a base width of 55 feet, 1.5 inches. These dimensions are very close to 6,666 inches in height and 666 inches for the base width. In Volume 1, I discussed how the face and ridge lines of the monument's pyramidion trace down to the ground and form an octagram star, a solar symbol. If the obelisk is male and the Vesica Pisces paths surrounding it are female, then the projection is their sun. The Egyptian gateway and winged solar disk in the elevator reveal that the Washington Monument embodies the story of Osiris and Isis conceiving Horus, god of the sun. A similar gateway stands at the entrance to the Temple of Karnak that Schwaller de Lubicz decoded. Its dimensions are a play of 6s and 5s. On September 11, 1666, Sir Christopher Wren presented his plans for the redesign of London after the Great Fire. His plans encoded octagonal radiating streets and a hidden Kabbalistic tree of life. Wren designed St. Paul's Cathedral to occupy the position of the Sephiro of the sun in his encoded tree of life. He made the cathedral 365 feet high to resonate with the sun. In his book Sacred Geometry, Deciphering the Code, Stephen Skinner shows that the length of Wren's cathedral is 6,660 inches, or 555 feet. On September 11, 2001, every World Trade Center building was destroyed on a site having a 65,000 square meter area. Cort Lindahl discovered an alignment running from the hexagon of Baalbek to IMP's World Trade Center in Baltimore, Maryland. The Baltimore World Trade Center is the world's tallest regular pentagonal building at 123.4 meters in height. The Pythagorean tetractys diagram consists of points arranged in 4 rows, with 1, 2, 3, and 4 points in each successive row. Lindahl's alignment goes through 2 of the points of the Baltimore pentagon and 2 of the midpoints of the Baalbek hexagon. I see this alignment as an expression of the relationship of hexagon to pentagon, or 6 to 5. I notice that not only does this alignment pass directly over Silbury Hill, but Silbury Hill divides the distance from the Baalbek hexagon to the Baltimore pentagon at the phi point, or golden ratio. Furthermore, the bearing from Baalbek to Baltimore is 314.16 degrees true north, echoing pi. Consider the simple fact that 33 plus 32 equals 65. The interaction of 6 and 5 is key. The marriage of the icosahedron to the dodecahedron is as 6 is to 5. The fact that these polyhedra are duals of each other reminds me of the fact that Osiris and Isis were not only husband and wife, but also brother and sister. The mean circumference of the Earth is 6/5 times 12 to the 4th miles. The hypercubit that measures the Earth is 6/5 raised to the 4th power. Strangely enough, 10-pin bowling resonates with the hyperdimensional metrology of the Earth and the tetractys. The hypercubit is equal to 24.8832 inches. The Earth's polar circumference is 24,883.2 miles. Melatonin, serotonin, and DMT are all molecules created in the brain, with atoms arranged in hexagons bonded to pentagons at the core. NASA-funded researchers have uncovered evidence that molecular DNA precursors are found in meteorites. They say that these molecules are created in space. The color of daylight is standardized by black-body radiation with a temperature 6,500 degrees above absolute zero. Even the world's most popular sport encodes 6/5. The ball is composed of hexagons joined to pentagons. There are 32 panels on the ball used in a sport played with 11 players opposing 11 players. Cricket, the world's second most popular sport, is played on a pitch measuring 66 feet long, with 11 players opposing 11. The return creases are 8'8" apart, the popping crease is 366 centimeters long, and the bat is 108 millimeters wide. The American football is a Vesica Pisces, with 11 players opposing 11 players on a field that squares the circle by area. Baseball encodes the Masonic square and compasses, and many interesting numbers. The games we play are captivating, perhaps because of the embedded numerology and symbolism that our subconscious minds understand, even if it doesn't dawn on us consciously. Knowing that there is a plan to create a 650-foot sun tower on Treasure Island in San Francisco that I discussed in Volume 1, I visited the site in the 11th month of 2011 to find out if the pair of 6-pointed barracks that occupy the site had been torn down yet. I found the barracks still intact, yet was blown away to find a colossal statue called Bliss Dance standing directly in front of the barracks. It seems to me that this statue resonates with Isis, posed as she is on a 7-sided island directly across the bay from the Transamerica Pyramid, which resonates with Osiris. In Volume 1, I detailed my discovery of a 9-sided polygon or enneagon connecting the Transamerica Pyramid, Columbus Avenue, and the street grid of San Francisco with Treasure Island. Kevin McMahon discovered that if you draw a line from the intersection of Mason and Columbus Streets to the top of the dome of the Manitoba Legislative Building, it passes through the International Peace Garden on the U.S.-Canada border. The fountain in the Peace Garden has an interesting longitude, and an auditorium on the U.S. side of the border is shaped like the Freemason symbol. Justin Morgan pointed out that California Street in San Francisco ends at 33rd Avenue in the west, adjacent to the grounds of Lincoln Park and the California Palace of the Legion of Honor. The fountain in front of the Legion of Honor is the western terminus of the Lincoln Highway, the first road across America that predated Route 66. I noticed that the axis of the Legion of Honor points directly at the Manitoba Legislative Building, and the line also passes through the International Peace Garden. Court Lindahl recognized that Sundial Bridge in Redding, California is due north of the center of the enneagon of San Francisco. In fact, Sundial Bridge is 166.66 nautical miles due north of the exact center of the enneagon. Sundial Bridge's 66-meter gnomon acts as the shadowcaster and the structural support for the bridge that was designed by Santiago Calatrava. Calatrava also designed the $2.22 billion Path Transportation Hall in the rebuilt World Trade Center in New York. The above-ground structure is called an oculus, a word which means eye-like opening. This all-seeing eye will measure 330 feet in width when completed. If the enneagon represents the Egyptian Ennead of 9 gods worshipped in Heliopolis, then the god at the top would of course be the creator, Atum. There are 81 possible relationships between 9 gods, as 9 times 9 is 81. In God's Secret Formula, chemist/physicist Peter Plichta recognized that there are exactly 81 stable atoms in the universe. Atomic numbers higher than 83 are radioactive and decay over time, eventually splitting into stable atoms. But elements 43 and 61 also are radioactive, thereby leaving exactly 81 stable atoms. Perhaps the Egyptian Ennead represents number itself, and the mathematical relationships between numbers 1 through 9 underpin the structure of the atom. Atom is god number 1 of 9. This can be rationalized as 1 over 9 as a fractional part of the whole. 1/9 equals 0.1111, and so on with eternally repeating ones. Suppose Isis is god number 5. Rationally, she would be 5 over 9, which is 0.5555, and so on. If Osiris is god number 6, his relationship to the whole would be as 6 over 9, or 2/3, which is 0.6666, and so on. The preponderance of repetitive single digits encoded into architecture, urban design, and the universe appears to be an expression of the 9 fundamental forces behind creation. Stephen O'Rourke identified a street pyramid in his article on the Masonic history of San Francisco. Masonic Center is located at 1111 California Street, in the position of the Queen's Chamber in the street pyramid. The relief sculpture on the exterior of 1111 California depicts a global tug-of-war between good and evil forces, which says dedicated to our Masonic brethren who died in the cause of freedom. Celebrated not in the U.S., but in the Commonwealth of Nations, whose flag resembles the very same globe at the center of the sculpture's tug-of-war, Remembrance Day is celebrated annually on the 11th hour of the 11th day of the 11th month. Grace Cathedral is directly across the street from 1111 California. I went inside and was blown away to discover an art installation called Invisible Man by Daniel Joshua Goldstein. The first sentence on the plaque says, quote, "Invisible Man is a suspended sculpture made of 864 syringes, each tipped with a red crystal bead. The cloud of arrows surrounds a negative space that, as the work rotates, reveals a human figure. As someone who lived through AIDS in San Francisco, this is a theme I call the presence of absence." End quote. Also inside Grace Cathedral is a wall commemorating the founding of the UN in San Francisco, and a piece of art showing the UN emblem at the center of numerous religious symbols. In addition, a Chi Rho is centered on the nave floor, the sign under which the Roman Emperor Constantine conquered, which is also the phrase on the Knights Templar Freemasonic logo. Finally, Grace Cathedral has a replica of the Labyrinth of Chartres Cathedral that I discussed in Volume 1. Jan Thulstrup was researching Pier 33 and noticed that its keystone arch is correlated with the Royal Arch Masonic Rite. Pier 33 is immediately adjacent to Alcatraz Landing, where the ferry docks for voyages to the infamous prison and tourist trap. Thulstrup noticed that the dock is oriented at a bearing of 33 degrees true north. Justin Morgan, one of the authors of the Sync book, discovered on a personal visit that ISIS Imports just happens to be at the end of Pier 33. ISIS imports his namesake Morgan automobiles. Alcatraz has the oldest lighthouse on the west coast, a classic symbol of illumination echoing the George Washington National Masonic Memorial in Alexandria, Virginia, which is itself a replica of the ancient lighthouse of Alexandria, Egypt, the Star of Isis. I drew a line from the top of the dome of City Hall to the start of the dock on Alcatraz Landing, and was amazed that it passes directly over 1111 California Street. Not only that, but the distance from dome to dock is 3,333 meters. This line that transects the street pyramid has roughly the same angle as the shaft in the Queen's Chamber that Bauval and Gilbert identified as pointing to the Star of Isis in the Orion Mystery. I chanced upon some brilliant but very obscure research by someone identified only by username P. Noblet that takes all discussion of whys and wherefores to another level. Consider that if you draw a line between the northernmost and southernmost points in South America, the line passes over the highest point in South America, Mount Aconcagua. If you draw a line from the westernmost to the easternmost points of South America and continue it eastward, it hits the highest point in Africa, Mount Kilimanjaro. If you draw a line from the southernmost to northernmost points in Africa and continue it northward, it hits the highest point in North America, Mount McKinley. If you draw a line from the southernmost to easternmost points in Asia, the line passes over the highest point in the world, Mount Everest. None of these alignments with the highest points are spot on like all the other alignments I've presented, but they are close enough to make very strong correlations. There are dozens more alignments like these involving continents and islands. If you think about it, plate tectonics, sea level, and erosion determine the northernmost, southernmost, easternmost, and westernmost points on any continent or island. It seems like there should be no correlation at all between the cardinal points and the highest points on land, but at this moment in time there is. On a higher level, consider the fact that the Sun is 400 times larger than the Moon. During a solar eclipse, the Moon is 1/400th of the distance from the Earth to the Sun. This is why the Moon perfectly covers the Sun during a solar eclipse. The circumference of the Earth times the circumference of the Moon equals the circumference of the Sun divided by 100. If the average distance between Earth and Sun is compared to an inch, then a light year would be 1 mile. John Martineau has discovered astounding patterns in his Little Book of Coincidence in the Solar System. Picking up where Kepler left off more than 400 years ago in Mysterium Cosmographicum, Martineau compared the mean orbits of planets in our system. Here is but a tiny sampling of the many beautiful harmonies he discovered. Visionaries Marco Rodin and Nassim Haramein's organizing principles from electrical coils to planets, suns, and beyond take the torus shape. If you slice a torus diagonally through its core so that the cut is tangent at exactly 2 points, the cross-section displays a perfect Vesica Pisces. Is this sacred geometry what astronomers are actually seeing in collapsing planetary nebulae, or is it the eye of God? In my own research, it has become hard for me to believe that coincidence lacks meaning. This has led me to question the appearance of separateness. Taoists and physicists agree nothing in the universe is truly separate. Indeed, everything is interrelated. Observer and observed are aspects of a single unified whole. Synchronicity is a window with a view beyond the mind's habitual categorization of reality into separate, disconnected objects and people. Repetitive digits such as 1111 and 666, key numbers like 24, 33, 81, or 864, and the mathematical constants pi, phi, and e appear to be codes of a universal matrix. I believe we are participants in this conscious matrix based on number and sacred geometry. Architects both ancient and modern have encoded secrets of consciousness in their structures and cities, secrets in plain sight. The intelligence behind this vast consciousness appears to influence and actively respond to the thoughts of individuals who react with varying degrees of awareness. It is an open question whether those people responsible for building encoded systems are fully conscious of what they are doing. Are they merely acting on personal inspiration and synchronicity? Or are they playing a mind-boggling game to control human awareness? Who planned all this? Was it an act of God, a Luciferian plot, designs of pharaohs, kings, and presidents? Or are extraterrestrials, beings from higher dimensions and/or from other times behind the curtain? Who can say with certainty? Each person must seek their own answers to the great mystery in the context of their own experiences, spiritual tradition, and culture. Isn't it time this knowledge and ancient wisdom comes out into the light of day for all who are interested to consciously perceive? My hope is that people will peacefully share knowledge with respect for each other and for our beautiful spaceship Earth. We are all travelers together.